Well, this is the second interview that I'm doing with what I call conversations with my friends. And these are people I know that I feel comfortable talking with because they've had experiences that are unique, unusual, sometimes inspiring, sometimes frightful, but in this case, very inspirational. Jim and I have known each other since he's been in the Military Writers Society of America. He's a fellow author, he's a writer, and he's married to a very good writer and author as well. And he lives in New Mexico. I don't know what town, out there by Santa Fe someplace, or where are you at, Jim?
A little village called Corrales, village of about 9,000 people in between Albuquerque and Santa Fe.
I should have known that because you write for that journal and you do those anthologies, right? With that time. Right. Okay. All right. We were talking several months ago, I think it was last year, October, September, November, whatever it was. And you went on a camping trip, outing, something that you weren't really jumping up and down to go on at the time, I think. But you had a unique experience there. And that's kind of why I wanted to take this conversation. We could talk about other things later, but you had a unique experience and you reached out to me because you knew you could share it with me because I'm one of these guys out there that has crazy stuff happen all the time. But I listened. I didn't pass any judgment. I didn't say, well, this is what it is. This is what it's not, because it is what it is. And I know you wrote to me about it. I thought it was so crystal clear that you really had a very unusual experience. In the Western world, we don't know what to label that. In the East, they would say that was some kind of Kundalini energy experience, or you're on the edge of samadhi, or something happened where you're one with all and you're aware of it. Your awareness expands. But in the Western world and in our Christian faith stuff, we don't know exactly where to classify that. So no classifications. Let's talk about this. And honestly, I think that if you read it, because when you wrote it, it was so clear, I wouldn't want you to sell it short. So if you could read to me that experience. First off, tell me about the group, tell me about the outing and how that came about. And I'm going to sit back.
I need to set up what happened, so I'm a 74 years old. I'm a retired Navy pilot. I'm retired civil service, and I have been writing since I was in high school. Since I retired from work, I've been writing all kinds of things that have nothing to do with what I did when I got paid to do it. I really enjoy writing things that are somewhat different. And I approach it from the perspective of, I know I cannot explain everything that has happened in my life with my logical mind, but I know they're true. So what I'm going to tell you is a little story. I'm going to set up what the event was that I was participating in. And then I'm going to tell you something that was really true. And it's just very different. And I did reach out to Bill. And the telling of me writing the story about what happened to me is also interesting, because everybody I needed to talk to figure out what happened to me was suddenly available, like Bill. 5 o'clock in the morning. Are you up? Sure, give me a call. And we talked for like an hour or two, and it was absolutely wonderful. So what happened? First of all, it was June of 2019, and I'm on Facebook, and something pops up that I wasn't looking for. It just pops up. It says that there's a organization I'd never heard of called No Barriers USA, and they're putting together a warriors expedition to the Big Bend National Park for 9 days. And apply. Won't cost anything. So I looked into it, and I was a little skeptical. It was, you're going to have to climb mountains, you're going to have to come down mountains, you're going to have to kayak down the Rio Grande, and you're going to carry everything on your back, everything. So I applied, and the next day I got up, and I happened to have an appointment with my doctor and at the VA, and I described what I was about to do, what I had applied for, and she looked at me and says, I hope you're going to do some training. So I did. I trained. I wasn't accepted to the group right away. I assumed it was because of my age, and that was fair. I didn't have a problem with that. But at the last minute, they had a cancellation, and they called me up and said, will you still come? I said, I've been training for 3 months, and yes, I can get there. I'll be on the road tomorrow. So we met and went into Big Bend National Park and went up a mountain, 25,000 steps going up the mountain, according to my Fitbit. Spent 3 days up, 2 nights up there, 3 days, came down. I was never so physically challenged in my entire life. That's an important part of what happened to me and maybe why it happened. My physical body was just absolutely drained. I needed help getting up the mountain. I needed help coming down the mountain. I had to understand that asking for help was okay. You know, all a bunch of veterans, men and women. There's a guy that's got one leg and he's going up the hill with a prosthetic. There's somebody who is legally blind and describes what he sees as being like in a kaleidoscope, and he's going up the hill. They're all younger than me. In fact, we were trading birthdays, and all of a sudden one of the guys says, "You're older than all of our parents. What the hell are you doing here?" And I went, I don't know. Something told me I had to go on this thing. There's something that's going to happen, and I don't know what it is. And my wife, who Bill talked about, she's an artist and an author, and she encouraged me to do this. And she said later, she says, I knew something was going to happen. So I'm exhausted. I'm back down the hill. We're getting ready to go the next morning into kayaks and go down for 33 miles in over 3 days on the Rio Grande, camping all the way. So it was at 6:30 in the morning. I'm going to read this because, as Bill said, the words were carefully chosen. 6:30 in the morning on Wednesday, October the 9th, 2019. After freshening up, I remember starting my usual yoga practice. Wednesday, I always do yoga in Corrales, New Mexico, not in Texas. At some point, I lost immediate awareness of my position or how long I had held it. The last move I recall was doing tree pose with my hands at heart center. And then I felt the first salty tear. The tear slid down my right cheek and brought me back into semi-awareness. The most intense joyfulness filled every part of my being. An explosion of feeling like nothing I had ever experienced. Joy, pure joy, beyond the intensity of holding my daughter for the first time, way past the thrill of marrying Yasmin, the love of my life, an overwhelming merging of pure sensations and a mortal body accustomed to only slight variations of feelings, unless provoked. A perfect union of being present in the moment and an event with no beginning or end. It was the most real experience of my life and the most exciting. I was one with the universe. My eyes were open, but I could not see. I was outdoors, and I knew I was near a flock of birds noisily awakening from their night of rest, but I could no longer hear. I knew there were people cooking breakfast, but I could no longer smell. I could feel my emotions, but I could not feel my body touching the ground. No one could feel this great, I later thought. Happiness that brought tears to my eyes with no apparent trigger, pure bliss, no separation of my physical body and the wild emotions uplifting my entire being. I remember smiling as the tears welled up in my eyes and fell on my shirt. Wow. It was incredible. And as I then came back to reality, and I don't know how long I wasn't in reality, but it was like, what the heck just happened? So I went to the guys that were running the place, and they're running the expedition, and I tried to describe what had happened, but I couldn't. I hadn't yet figured out how to take what happened and put it into words that people might be able to understand and resonate. I just said to them, something just happened to me. I don't know what it is. but it was not trivial. And I've got to figure it out. So we spent the next days kayaking down the Rio Grande. And each night we'd talk about our experiences. And I tried again to describe to the group. I said, you know, the word that came to me initially was reborn. I said, but that's not the right word, but it's where I'm starting. And I kept trying to figure out how to describe those words I just read, how to tell people what happened. So I woke up with one of the mornings on the river and said, no, that's not the right word. It's not reborn. The word is rapture. And that word just was pounding into my head. That's what happened. So when I was done and we came out of the expedition, I talked to the other participants along the way. They didn't quite understand what happened to me, but they were very encouraging. And I got lots of opinions. You know, it was Jesus speaking to me. It was this, it was that. And I decided I'm going to approach this from my left brain, and I'm going to try to figure out what happened. Why to me at 74 years old? Why? And what am I supposed to do with it? And that's what my mission then became for the next few months after this event, to try to come to grips with those questions. So I reached out to Bill. I reached out to medical personnel. I consulted my psychiatrist, my psychologist. I talked to anybody, my yoga teacher, you know. I hired a psychic. And I took it all in. Just took it in and just tell me what you think happened. And why to me? And what am I supposed to do with it? And I finally came to conclusions. Bill helped. All of those people helped. I must have consulted 24 different people. Why me? The simple answer is because I happened to be looking at Facebook in June, and I saw an ad. And something told me to do that. And I went with my gut. I don't know why I did it. I'm 74 years old. I don't need to be climbing 25,000 steps up a mountain with, what the heck was it, 50 or 100 pounds? Must have been 50 pounds on my back. I mean, that was insane to do that. And coming down was actually worse, but that's another whole story. But I did. I trusted my instincts that there was something that I needed to do. And I'm so glad I did it. And why now? Why at age 74? That was a tough one. You know, I could picture, I said, well, you know, the young people, they need to hear this story. But then I kept looking at, they kept looking at me during, I'm appreciative of them and their joy. They expressed their joy in different ways, but they all looked at me and appreciated the fact that I had had a joyful experience and I was willing to talk about it and share it. And let's face it, how many people like us have things happen that you can't explain with the logical mind and then don't tell anybody about it because they're afraid that you'll think that you flew in from Pluto. And honest to God, that's what I thought people would say. And I had to get the courage. I had to have the courage to be able to go open with this and just tell people what happened and convince them that, you know, something. So what was it that I was supposed to do with it? And Bill said it over and over again. Enjoy it. It's yours. Own it. And that's the message to the younger people, to the other people, is that no matter, and especially so today is June the 6th, 2020. We've got a lot of stuff going on in this country. I am living proof that no matter what has happened in your life, no matter what your age, joy is still possible. That's a good message. Stop right there. I don't need to go out and found a religion. I don't need to go do anything more than just tell people and encourage people. Trust your instincts. Realize that things happen sometimes for reasons you can't explain, but go with them. And when they happen to you, embrace them. And then don't be afraid to tell people about them. Bill is certainly not afraid of telling people about his experiences. I've listened to his broadcasts and I was absolutely amazed. But I end my story with finally deciding that I now understood the poem High Flight, written in August of 1941 by a 19-year-old pilot officer, John McGee, from the Royal Canadian Air Force, just before he dies. And he wrote a poem, which is posted lots of places. I'm a pilot. Most pilots have heard the poem. It's at the Air Force Academy. I'll just give you a little excerpt because it's where I end and what I realized had happened to me. High Flight. Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter-silvered wings. I've topped the wind-swept heights with easy grays where never lark or even eagle flew. And while silent, lifting mind I've trod the high, untrespassed sanctity of space. Put out my hand and touched the face of God. I think that's what happened to me. And I am grateful for the opportunity to tell people that things like this can happen to you. Be open. Reverend Bill is open. My God, I've never met a guy who's been so open to different kinds of things and experiences. And that's the key. Be open. In my case, it was being physically, absolutely exhausted that my defenses were down. I was asking for help, and it came. It came. I needed it. And if I needed it, other people need it, and they need to hear it's possible. No matter how bad things are, it's possible to still have joy.
Wow. I've heard it again, and that's not my first time, and I'm just as moved with it now as I was the first time. Because when you called me up, I mean, I could tell there's no way in the world that anybody could explain it away. You had something happen. I mean, you were like an eyewitness to this inner journey that happened, this explosion within yourself. And that's kind of the only way you really could look at this thing. This was really of some great awakening within yourself. And maybe that's what the great masters, Jesus and Buddha and all the rest of them talk about, this awakening experience. And maybe in essence, it was a rebirth. Maybe that is about being reborn. It's all about conscious energy and all that. I don't know how to explain any of that, nor do I explain anything that's ever happened to me, nor do I try to explain what happened to you. Because, it doesn't matter. There's people out there who will analyze it to death. Oh, you were low, sugar levels were low, this chemical reaction. I mean, 1,000 things will come up. And the bottom line was, it was destined. It was no accident that came up on your screen. You
Right.
saw the thing. It's not something, I know you weren't looking to take a hike. It's not in your world. So, and then you're kind of ignored, like you're on the edge, too old and all that kind of stuff. And then you train for it, and then there's a cancellation. So you end up there and you got to say, that's more than a coincidence.
Right.
That was an eventful destiny. And you were flowing in the energy of that. So what you did right was you went with your intuition, well, yeah, okay, I'll try this. Yeah, okay, I'll go. Yeah, I'll be there. You didn't overanalyze it like, well, geez, if I go there, I could get injured. I could hurt my ankle. I could have a heart attack. It was, okay, let's try it. So you opened yourself up to what happened. And when you got exhausted, my feeling on that is your defenses were down, as you talk about. Your defenses are down. You're not putting up walls around you. You're just really open. I think the message, and I wanted to share this, I've been after you for a long time to get together and do this, because it didn't happen just for you. That'd be a selfish universe. It's not for your entertainment only, It happened to you to tell others, because there's other people out there that are, especially now, God knows if they're sitting all day watching television, they're just stressed out, anxiety ridden. I don't care what political beliefs you have, it's uncomfortable for everybody.
Right.
Right? So people have to know that we're all human. And as humans, sometimes we have this other than human spiritual experience, that other side of us. And that's where we're all the same. You know, as a human, we all have different experiences, different race, different creed, different religion, different beliefs, politics, all that. But if you take away all that, it's just the inner. And I think you, my friend Jim, you found that inner you, which is the same inner you as the inner me. We're all one. There had to be kind of a sense of oneness with what was going on around you. I mean, the way you talk, it sounds like one of those experiences. Um, so I want to thank you for reading that. And if you want to add any more to that, great. And if you have are you open to taking questions from people? You know, if people write you at your email
Sure.
address?
Sure. Absolutely.
Why don't you give your email address? Because there's people
Right.
who want to contact you.
So my last name, it's Jim, and then it's Tritten, Tritten. So the easiest email to remember is my last name, Tritten, Tritten, @yahoo.com. Just send something there, I'll get it, and be glad to share with you. I've shared the writing of this story called Touched by Rapture. I've shared it widely, but that's not enough. I know I need to talk to people and convince them to open themselves up and then not be surprised at what happens. Now, in that case, let me continue with something that Bill talks a lot about in his interviews, because it happens to me. It has happened to me too, and it may also influence why I did what I did and what happened to me. I also I've been trusting my intuition and having experiences in which I could see the future, not the same as Bill. I am blown away with the stories that he's told. At a much lesser degree, things have happened to me in which I know are true and they're going to happen to people. And it caused me angst when I realized that it was true and it was happening. For example, I mean, easy ones, we're getting ready to go on a trip to Bolivia, and both my wife and I have dreams about something bad's going to happen. We canceled the trip. They had an earthquake right in the village where she was going to go see her son, Peace Corps volunteer. That's an easy one. I did some research for the Navy when I was working as a civilian for them, and I got into combat leadership, how to develop combat leaders. And I did a lot of research into intuitive combat decision making. The Marine Corps at that time, this would have been the early 90s, was hot on this stuff. And it was most interesting to find that Napoleon talked about coup d'oil, and Moltke talked about Blick. And the point being that the commander can process intuitively what needed to be done, and get away from me with all this staff recommendations, pros and cons, COA 1, 2, 3. No, send the troops there. And when I was trying to explain this, because I wrote a book-length technical report on it to the admiral who commissioned the study, he got to the part where I was talking about intuition and decision making, and I could see the look on his face turn to a scowl, and he went, woman's word. And he's a good guy. And I wasn't surprised with that reaction.
Standard.
I looked at him and I just went, Admiral, I said, we're both Navy pilots. We both landed on the aircraft carrier. Have you ever taken power off before you saw the ball? Now, let me explain that technically. There's a glide slope indicator. It's going to tell you if you're high or low. You're not supposed to do anything until the glide slope indicator indicates that you're either high or low, and then you either add power or take off power. But you do it after you see what needs to be done, and then you do it. And I looked at him and I said, have you taken power off or added it before you saw the ball move? And he turned white. And I looked at him and I said, so have I. So intuition is something I know is true. I went to, were members of the Edgar Cayce, I forgot the name of the organization, but you know who Edgar Cayce is, Bill.
Yeah, it's
I went to a like a week-long conference workshop on psychic abilities. They taught us 8 different ways to test and see whether we had psychic abilities. All of them worked for me. All of them. Everyone. And to the point where it was, people were telling me, it's impossible you could know this. And I go, I know, but I do. And the quandary was, at the very end, a woman came up to me, because by this time they all knew that it was working for me. And she said, will my husband ever be out of pain? And I knew the answer, and I didn't want to tell her. And I had to wrestle with that. And if you're a spiritual person, if you're a religious person, you're trained how to deal with that. I wasn't. I shut down. I just said, no, I don't want this power. I don't want to be able to see what's happening. And I'd let it come back once in a while, especially like if I was doing job interviews and people would come in, I could size them up within 30 seconds, whether I wanted to work with that person. Or vice versa, when I was being interviewed and I was trying to decide if I really wanted to go to that organization or that company. And I made many choices in my life on intuitive decision making, with intuitive decision making. And I'm comfortable with that. So again, this may explain why I was able to accept what happened to me on October the 9th, 2019, and why I'm not afraid to talk about it now. I've gotten very comfortable with doing that. I've got a PTSD diagnosis. I hid it for years, and was ashamed of it, was afraid of it. Oh my God, this is a mental illness. I'm going to lose my job, et cetera, et cetera. I talk about it all the time now. I talk about it at medical schools. I talk about it in groups. I've been a facilitator. I've gone into prisons and into jails and run support groups and taught people how to run support groups in jail in that environment. So if you have something pop up on your screen someday and you go, God, why would I want to do that? But something tells you to do it, do it.
And being 74 years old myself, us young guys, there is no better time than now. And you say, why at 74? Why not? You had a whole lifetime of learning this, and now you're at that point, you're saying, okay, I've been in the class. now let's make it work, right? Let's open up for the rest of it. But you know, and I know at our age, what we knew when we were 20, when we thought we knew it all in our 20s, 30s, I knew it all. Come on.
Sure.
And now in our 70s, we don't even know the questions. You know, it's like, do we know all the questions? So it's a matter of emptying the bowl all the time. You know, you fill the bowl up. If you never empty it, you never get anything new. So like what you went through with this thing, this awakening spirits, well, I'll call it.
Yes, definitely.
You have been emptying your bowl so you can receive. And there's a lot of people out there right now in the United States, particularly, and around the world, with all this stuff going on. They're going to have to empty what they believed, what they thought was true, with their paradigm, their belief system, so they can learn something new. Just because things were doesn't mean they're always going to be. So anyway, Jim, it's been my pleasure always to talk to you. And I enjoy listening to these stories, but truth of the matter is you are an intuitive person, and you've only been holding it back and denying it for all your years. And now you're not afraid. So you've opened it up, and you realize that your gut feeling on stuff was actually your intuition. And
Right.
A lot of decisions you made in your life, like who you married, where you're going to move, all these things, they're not logic based. You think you're a logically based person, but they're always influenced by your intuition.
Right.
Unfortunately, some people out there have some strange voices in their heads, and I don't tell people listen to inner voice, because some people have an inner voice they shouldn't be listening to.
Right.
But in your case, you've listened and you've heard, and now you're sharing. And I hope that this message is spread. Hope people contact you. I hope that, well, I don't hope, I know that this opens the door for other experiences. It's once you see something, you believe it's possible.
Right.
And if people don't see anything in their lives, they don't think anything's possible. For example, it's the old story about Christopher Columbus, right? He sails into the New World. He goes to the island, and the Native Americans, they didn't know they were Native Americans. but the Indians, whatever they were there, the tribe, right? They look out the ocean, there's 3 ships. They don't see them because they didn't believe them. They'd never seen one before. They didn't know they existed. And when they looked at the ocean, they did not see the 3 ships sitting in the harbor. I mean, that's crazy, right? But it's like our lives. If you're told certain things all your life, this is a fact, this is a fact, you know, you don't believe things. That's why children see angels.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, before this was starting, we were talking about my friend, the old Navy or Marine colonel, Top Gun guy that saw an angel on his wing, and that story's out there. But even grown men see angels. So just, yep. Jim, thank you very much. We're going to get together, and I'm interested in taking a hiking trip, maybe not with that group, but maybe me and you go up into the mountains there of New Mexico. As soon as this virus is lifted, I'd love to explore there. There's a place I've done a little bit of hiking. That's up there where they got that Vietnam Veteran Memorial up there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's old Apache land. What's that called? This fire, what's it called?
Angel Fire.
Angel Fire. I've given several speeches there and talks, floated in there by helicopter. I mean, I've been there, and I've never really got a chance other than just a little tiny trails. I really want to explore the place because there's an energy there.
There is. And Yasmin and I have been to Angel Fire a few times and participated in something that's run by the National Veterans Wellness and Healing Center, which is a nonprofit, military people and now first responders, and they specialize in free 1-week-long treatment workshops on PTSD, and they're phenomenal. They're absolutely great, and my ability to maintain some degree of control over parts of my life, assisted by chemicals, is as a result of having participated with that organization. So yeah, that's a great place to go. It's a very special place to go, Bill. You're absolutely right.
Well, it's interesting because when I was there, it was, you remember the Military Writers Society of America, and you're one of the members that are probably aware of why we were formed and everything. A lot of guys, they join it, but they don't know what the real reason was. Real reason, I was working with veterans, PTSD veterans, like in Michigan and in that area out there and the Great Lakes. And I put together a program using writing as a tool for healing the psyche and the soul and all that. It didn't matter if it was fiction, poetry, novels, memoirs, didn't make any difference. It's the same process, even doing artwork and music. So I'm glad you're out there doing that. I'm glad you're working with these organizations. Me and you will get together in the future when we'll take that there again. All right. God bless.
Right.
And
thanks.
And it was nice having you on the show. And look forward.
Good seeing you again.
All right. And look forward to those people tuning in on this for interviews and conversations with my other friends. All is interesting. Some more interesting, more special. If there's anything more special than special, they're all special. They're all my friends. God bless.
God bless you, Gil.